clamp the vessel right there.
I have it ready with the suction.
The emergency room shook with urgency as nurses pushed the stretcher through double doors. Sara Malik, a 62-year-old woman who had collapsed at home, lay unconscious, her skin pale, lips faintly blue. Her son Adam, just 24, trailed behind them, breathless and terrified, calling her name even though she couldn't hear him. Inside the procedure bay, doctors lifted her oxygen mask and tried to open her mouth to secure her airway. The moment the retractor widened her jaw, the entire team went still. One nurse's hand shook so badly, she nearly dropped the instrument she was holding. A senior doctor leaned closer, his face draining of color. He whispered, barely above a breath, "What is this?" Inside her mouth, something thick, grayish, and unnatural was blocking the view of her throat, a dense, tangled obstruction unlike anything they had ever seen. Adam reached the doorway, his voice cracking. "Is she breathing? What did you find?" The doctors didn't answer. They were frozen in shock. The room erupted into motion again as the shock faded. Monitors beeped in uneven patterns while two nurses worked to keep Sara's oxygen level from crashing even further. One doctor tried to slide a standard airway tube into her mouth, but it refused to go more than a few centimeters. "It's blocked," he muttered, alarm rising in his voice. Another doctor leaned in with a small light. "This isn't swelling, something is physically covering the back of her palate." His brows tightened. "It looks layered." Adam stepped closer, trembling. "What do you mean layered? What's in her mouth?" No one answered him directly. A nurse grabbed a special flexible airway tool. "We need a fiber optic scope. I can't see past that, whatever it is." She exchanged a scared glance with the others. Sara's chest rose unevenly, a rasping sound escaping through her half-blocked throat. Adam's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out everything else. All he could think was one desperate thought. How long had this been growing inside her? Before the hospital lights, before the alarms, before the stretcher, there had been small moments. Quiet moments that Sara had pushed aside as nothing. It started with a strange bitterness at the back of her tongue. A taste she couldn't explain. She tried gargling with warm salt water, brushing twice, even chewing mint leaves. Nothing helped. Then came the discomfort. Not pain, just a stubborn, irritating pressure deep in the roof of her mouth. Some days it felt like a sore spot. Other days it felt like something was stuck there. She would press her tongue against it and feel a rough patch, as if the skin had changed texture overnight. Still, she said nothing. At dinner one evening, Adam noticed her eating slower. She smiled and waved him off. "Age just catches up in strange ways," she joked, even though the taste in her mouth was growing worse each week. In private, she would cover her mouth with her hand, embarrassed by a sour smell she couldn't get rid of. She avoided speaking closely to people, avoided laughing too loudly, and most of all, she avoided worrying her son. As the discomfort worsened, Sara began searching for solutions that wouldn't bother anyone, especially her son. She didn't want Adam to think she was getting weaker with age, or that she needed extra care. So she did what many people her age do in silence. She looked for something simple, cheap, and promising. At the small pharmacy near her neighborhood, a bright green box caught her eye. Natural mouth ulcer and throat cleansing gel. 100% safe. Fast relief. Removes odor, swelling, and infections. The claims felt comforting. The price was low. And the smiling model on the box looked like a grandmother who had just found magic. Sara bought it quietly. No prescription. No questions. At home, she applied the gel with a cotton swab, spreading it across her gums and upper palate. It burned sharply at first, then cooled into a numb, soothing sensation. She sighed in relief. "Finally," she whispered. For the next week, she used it every night, never missing a dose. What she didn't know was that each application added another layer of damage, another push toward the disaster that would soon block her ability to breathe. The first week after using the gel felt almost normal. The burning sensation faded, the bitter taste reduced a little, and Sara convinced herself she had finally found the simple fix she'd been desperate for. But then, small changes crept in. She started waking with a dry, metallic taste coating the back of her tongue. Sometimes she coughed out tiny flakes, soft and thread-like, catching them with a tissue before anyone could see. She stared at the little pieces, puzzled, but tossed them away quickly. Probably food, she told herself. Her voice became slightly hoarse. Not enough for concern, just enough to sound as if she'd been crying or speaking too much. When she pressed her tongue toward the roof of her mouth, the rough patch felt thicker, firmer, almost like it had shape. At lunch one afternoon, Adam noticed her chewing on only one side. "Mom, your jaw bothering you?" he asked. She smiled, forcing confidence she didn't feel. "Just sensitive gums. Nothing more." But alone in the bathroom, she leaned over the sink, breathing slowly through her nose, afraid to open her mouth too wide. A faint smell drifted upward, something sour, moldy, and unfamiliar. She rinsed again and again. Yet the smell stayed, and the roughness kept growing. It happened during a quiet dinner, the kind where Sara tried to act normal, even though every bite felt heavier than it should. Adam had made her favorite, soft chicken stew, hoping it would help her appetite. She lifted a small spoonful, brought it to her lips, and tried to swallow. Halfway down, something caught. Her entire body jerked as she began choking, violently, painfully. Her eyes widened. She slammed a hand to her throat. The spoon clattered against the bowl. "Mom!" Adam jumped from his seat, rushing behind her. He hit her upper back with desperate force, again and again. A thick, wet clump landed in her napkin, grayish, tangled, glued together like soggy fabric. Sara stared at it only for a second before quickly folding the napkin shut, terrified of what her son might see. Adam reached forward. "What was that? Let me see." She shook her head hard, coughing, eyes watering. "Just food, it's fine." "It's fine, Adam." But her voice sounded wrong, strained, tight, as if something inside her throat was fighting for space. That night she tried to sleep, but woke gasping, clutching her chest, mouth open in silent panic. Adam found her in the hallway, lips faintly tinged with blue. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911. At the hospital, Sara drifted in and out of consciousness as doctors worked around her. Her breathing was shallow, each inhale sounding like it was scraping past something that didn't belong. Adam paced near the wall, running a hand through his hair again and again, unable to stay still. A nurse approached him gently. "We're taking her for imaging, CT and MRI. We need to see what's blocking her airway." Adam nodded, but his hands were shaking. Minutes later, the doctors gathered around glowing screens in a small reading room. The images were clear, too clear. A dense, tangled structure clung to the roof of her mouth and extended downward toward her throat. It looked layered, almost like thick mats of tissue and fibrous material fused together. "This isn't a normal growth," the ENT specialist said, voice heavy with disbelief. "It's structured, built up over time." Another doctor zoomed in on a section of the scan. Embedded inside the mass were tiny reflective fragments, thin slivers that looked eerily like bits of packaging fibers. Adam overheard part of their conversation and stepped forward. "What does that mean? What's inside her? What is that thing?" No one could give him a clear answer. They only knew one thing. Whatever was growing in her mouth shouldn't exist at all. While the doctors discussed the scans, Adam stepped into the corner, trying to steady his breathing. He felt useless, like he was watching his mother slip away through glass he couldn't break. A nurse approached softly. "We need her personal items for documentation. Could you check her bag?" Adam nodded and reached for the small handbag she'd carried from home. Inside were the usual things: a tissue pack, a worn wallet, a handwritten shopping list, and then something he didn't recognize. A small green box. The same box the doctors had mentioned during their whispered speculation. Natural mouth ulcer and throat cleansing gel. Almost empty. Adam froze. He opened it. The inside of the box was sticky with dried residue. The instructions were crude. The ingredients list was vague, filled with unfamiliar chemicals disguised as botanical extracts. He sank into the nearest chair, gripping the box with trembling hands. She was treating herself. Flashbacks flooded his mind, him telling her weeks ago, "Mom, please don't waste money on random fixes," and her nodding as if she understood. But she hadn't told him anything. He whispered to himself, voice cracking, "Why didn't you say something, Mom?" For the first time that night, Adam let himself cry. Adam sat outside the consultation room, the green box still in his hand, when the ENT specialist finally approached. The doctor's expression was steady, but the tightness around his eyes revealed the truth. This would not be simple. "We have to operate," he said quietly. "The mass in your mother's mouth is blocking her airway and spreading across her palate. If we wait, even an hour, it could completely obstruct her breathing." Adam swallowed hard. "So you can remove it?" "We have to try," the doctor replied. "But you need to understand the risks. The mass is attached to delicate tissue. Removing it could cause bleeding, infections, or permanent changes to her speech." In rare cases, the airway can collapse during surgery. The words felt like sharp stones dropping inside Adam's chest. He glanced toward the hallway where Sara lay unconscious, chest rising in uneven waves. She looked so small, so fragile, far older than she ever allowed him to see. The doctor handed him a consent form. Adam's hand shook as he signed it. "Just save her," he whispered. The doctor nodded. "We'll do everything we can. But whatever we saw when we opened her mouth." He paused, troubled. "It cannot stay there." The operating room was silent except for the hum of machines and the steady beeping of monitors. Sara lay under the bright surgical lights, her breathing shallow beneath the anesthesia. The surgical team stood ready, each person tense, each movement measured. The lead Yenti surgeon gently adjusted her jaw and positioned the retractor to open her mouth wide enough to see the obstruction clearly. As the metal instrument stretched her lips apart, the hidden world inside her mouth finally came into view. A nurse gasped softly. Another covered her mouth with her glove. Clinging to the entire roof of Sara's mouth was a thick, grayish-white mass, almost like a living carpet. It wasn't smooth, its surface was uneven, covered in tiny thread-like filaments woven together. Some areas had a dull shine, as if pieces of packaging fibers or dried gel were embedded within the growth. The surgeon stared for a moment, stunned. "This didn't form overnight," he said quietly. "This looks constructed." Carefully, he took a blunt tool and nudged the edge of the mass. It didn't peel away easily. It clung tightly, fused to her palate as though it had grown roots. The room felt much heavier now. "Prepare for layered removal," the surgeon instructed. "No matter how long this takes, it has to come out." The surgery had been steady for the first several minutes. Slow, careful, each layer of the strange mass peeled away with precision. But the deeper the surgeon worked, the more stubborn the growth became. It clung to Sara's palate, as if it had fused itself into the very structure of her mouth. "Section 3 is attached tighter than expected," one nurse warned, her voice trembling. The surgeon nodded, slipping a tool beneath a thicker portion. "We need to free this carefully. Keep suction ready." As he applied the slightest pressure, the mass suddenly tore loose in a way no one anticipated, ripping faster than his hand could adjust. A rush of dark blood followed, pooling into her throat. "Airway! Blockage!" a nurse shouted. Sara's heart monitor shrieked, numbers falling violently. They suctioned fast, but her oxygen level plummeted. "Come on, breathe, breathe," the anesthesiologist whispered. Outside, Adam heard the alarm through the doors. He froze, fear swallowing him whole. His palms began to sweat as he whispered, "Please don't let her die, please." Inside, the surgeon worked quickly, sealing the tear, stabilizing the airway, forcing the bleeding to slow. For a moment, no one knew if she would come back. Then, her oxygen numbers flickered upward. Weak, slow but climbing. Relief washed across the room. They weren't done yet. But she was still alive. Hours later, Adam sat alone in a cold consultation room, his foot tapping uncontrollably on the floor. He kept picturing the alarms he'd heard during surgery, the sudden panic, the nurses running. Every second felt like a punishment he didn't deserve. Finally, the Yenti surgeon walked in, holding a printed report and a small sealed container. His face was tired, exhausted even, but calmer than before. Adam stood immediately. "Is she alive? Please tell me she's alive." "She's stable," the doctor said gently. "Weak, but stable." Adam exhaled so hard it felt like his lungs emptied all at once. "What was in her mouth? What did you remove?" The surgeon placed the container on the table. Inside it, the mass sat like a shriveled, tangled mat, grayish, stringy, and disturbingly textured. "This wasn't a tumor," the doctor began. "And it wasn't an infection the way you're thinking." Adam frowned, heart sinking. The doctor continued, "Your mother's mouth reacted to chemical irritation, repeated irritation. The gel she was using contained harsh agents that caused chronic inflammation. As her mouth tried to protect itself, it began layering tissue, then trapping fibers, bacteria, and residue from the product. Over time, those layers fused into this." Adam swallowed hard. "She was using that stuff because she didn't want to worry me." The doctor nodded slowly. "It's very common. People hide pain. They try to fix things quietly, until the body can't hide it anymore." Adam lowered his head, guilt burning in his chest. He whispered, "I should have insisted. I should have seen the signs." The doctor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Right now, she needs you. You can't change the past, but you can be here for her recovery." When Adam was finally allowed into the recovery room, he entered slowly, almost afraid of what he might see. The harsh chaos of the emergency hallways was gone, Here, everything was calm, quiet, and dimmer. Sara lay on the bed with soft bandages placed inside her mouth and around her jaw to keep her comfortable. Her breathing was steady now, weak but steady. Her gray hair rested gently against the pillow, and for the first time in days, her face no longer looked strained. Adam approached her bedside, his chest tightening. "Mom, I'm here," he whispered. Her eyelids fluttered. It took effort, but she opened them. When she recognized him, a tear formed instantly. She tried to speak, but the words didn't come. Her throat was too sore, too raw. She reached for his hand instead. Adam took it, holding it carefully, as if she were made of glass. She moved her lips slowly, mouthing, "I'm sorry." Adam shook his head, his vision blurring. "No, please don't apologize. You didn't do anything wrong." More tears slipped from her eyes. "You hid the pain because you didn't want to burden me," he said softly. "But I need you. I always need you." Her fingers squeezed weakly. For the first time that night, they both cried, relief, guilt, love all blending together. And in that quiet room, mother and son found their strength again. Weeks passed, and Sara slowly regained strength. She still spoke softly, still avoided certain foods, and still tired easily, but she was alive, healing, and trying to move forward. Adam stayed close, driving her to every appointment, reminding her about medication, and refusing to let her hide behind her old habit of "I'm fine." One afternoon, the Yenti Clinic invited Sara to a small support circle for older women dealing with oral and throat health issues. Sara felt nervous, clutching her scarf as she entered the modest meeting room. A few women sat in chairs arranged in a loose circle, each with their own quiet story etched into their expressions. When it was her turn to speak, Sara hesitated. Her voice wasn't as strong as it used to be, but the sincerity in it made everyone lean in. "I almost lost my life," she said softly. "Because I was ashamed of how my mouth smelled, how it looked, how it felt. I thought I could fix it alone." Her eyes lowered to the empty green box she held. "This," she said, lifting it slightly, "is what almost took everything from me. Please don't trust cheap miracles. And don't hide your pain." A few women wiped their eyes. Adam watched from the doorway, pride filling his chest. Sara wasn't just recovering, she was helping others avoid the same fate. In the following weeks, Sara's quiet testimony from the support circle began to ripple outward in ways she never expected. One of the nurses who attended the meeting asked for permission to share her warning with a small online health group. Sara agreed, thinking it might help a handful of people. But within days, dozens of comments appeared beneath the post. "My mom used that same gel. Her mouth burned for weeks. I thought I was the only one having strange reactions. Where did you buy this product? I need to warn my aunt." People began uploading photos of similar boxes, similar ingredients, similar side effects. Some showed swollen gums, persistent mouth sores, or strange patches on their palate. Nothing as severe as Sara's, but alarming enough that families wanted answers. Adam encouraged her gently. "Mom, people are listening. You're helping them." A small community blog picked up her story, then a local health newsletter. A week later, a consumer safety page posted an alert about unregulated natural mouth gels imported without proper testing. Quietly, almost unnoticed, the Greenbox product disappeared from shelves and online listings. There was no big headline, no courtroom victory, but real change had happened. One woman's hidden suffering had protected countless others from making the same mistake. And for Sara, that alone felt like justice. Months passed, and healing finally began to feel real. Sara still woke some mornings with tenderness in her mouth, but the fear was gone. The weight on her son's chest had lifted too, slowly, steadily, replaced with careful hope. At her final Yenti checkup, the doctor examined her gently, then stepped back with a relieved smile. "You're healing beautifully," he said. "No new growth. No irritation. Your mouth is finally resting." Sara let out a shaky breath she'd been holding for weeks. "Thank you," she whispered. On the way home, she stopped by a small drawer in her bedroom. Inside were dozens of old bottles, creams, herbal gels, and home remedies she had collected over the years, little shortcuts she once trusted more than asking for help. She gathered them in her arms and dropped them into the trash. When Adam walked in, puzzled, she pointed to the phone on the table. "If something ever feels wrong again," she said softly, "I'll use this before anything else." Adam smiled, pulling her into a gentle hug. "Or you can call me first." Sara nodded, eyes warm with gratitude. For the first time in a long time, she felt safe and understood.